Before you tell the world about your blessings, remember, not every heart that smiles with you is truly happy for you. Some blessings are safer in silence. This is the story of Michael, a man whose kindness was pure, whose end was painful, but whose life became a timeless lesson. If you love powerful stories that touch the heart and teach the soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment, because every story carries a truth worth remembering. They were three young men whose friendship was like a rope tied from their university days, strong, unbreakable, and full of dreams. Their names were Michael, David, and Kelvin. Back in school, they were known as the Trio of Victory. You would hardly see one without the others. They studied together, laughed together, and even shared food when times were hard. When one was broke, the other two covered him. When one was sad, the others lifted his spirit. It was the kind of brotherhood people envied. In their final year, they sat under the mango tree behind the hostel, the same place they often discussed their future. That day, Michael said something that sealed their friendship. "Let's make a promise. Whoever succeeds first will lift the others up." David had laughed and stretched his hand out. "Deal." Kelvin smiled, placing his palm on theirs. "We rise together." It was a vow made in innocence, a vow made without knowing how cruel life could become. After graduation, each of them was posted to a different state for their national service. Michael went to Lagos, the city of hustle and opportunity. David was sent to Ibadan, while Kelvin served in Enugu. They kept in touch, calling and chatting often, talking about their dreams of owning businesses, cars, and happy homes. But life after NYSC did not go as planned. The months that followed were full of frustration and waiting. David sent out countless applications, but never got a reply. Kelvin went from one interview to another, each ending with the same line: "We'll get back to you." They began to feel invisible, as if the world had forgotten them. Meanwhile, Michael's story took a different turn. He applied to a major oil company in Lagos and, to his surprise, got hired almost immediately. His friends rejoiced when he shared the news in their group chat. David sent a voice note saying, "Bro, I'm proud of you." "You deserve it," Kelvin added laughing emojis and wrote, "Big man loading." On the surface, they were happy for him, but behind those smiles, something darker began to form. A tiny seed of envy that slowly started to grow. Michael settled into his new job. He worked hard, stayed humble, and often called to check on his two brothers. Whenever they complained about job hunting or needing money, Michael never hesitated to help. He would send them little cash to support their search, always ending with the same words, greater than, "Don't worry, your time will come." For a while, things seemed fine, but as months passed, the gap between them began to widen. Michael talked about work meetings and new experiences. His life was moving forward while theirs stood still. Kelvin started keeping silent during group calls. David stopped replying to messages as quickly as before. When they finally spoke, it felt forced, as if friendship had become a duty, not a joy. Still, Michael remained cheerful. He didn't notice their growing coldness. He still saw them as brothers, bound by old memories. 6 months into his job, he bought his first car, a clean silver Toyota Camry. His heart was filled with gratitude, and his first thought was to share his joy with his friends. He drove to Ibadan to see David, and then to Enugu for Kelvin. They celebrated, took pictures, and drank together. Michael gave them money for transport, bought them new clothes, and spoke of hope. That night, As they sat around a small table with laughter echoing through the night, Michael raised his glass and said, "We made a promise in school that whoever rises first will lift the others." I haven't forgotten that David and Kelvin smiled. Their faces glowed under the yellow light, but their hearts burned with quiet jealousy. They didn't know it yet, but that same promise, the one made under a mango tree, would one day lead one of them to his grave and the other two to ruin. Because sometimes the people who celebrate your success today are the same ones who can't stand to see you shine tomorrow. When the excitement of graduation faded, reality began to bite like Harmattan wind. The three friends who once dreamed of big offices and bright futures suddenly faced the truth about life after school. For David and Kelvin, every day became a test of survival. They woke up early, ironed the same old shirts, and walked under the sun searching for jobs. Some days, they queued for hours at interviews only to be told, "We'll get back to you," but nobody ever did. They would return home, tired, dusty, and discouraged. Their phones were always silent. No job calls, no opportunities. At night, they comforted themselves by remembering their school days, when they believed life would be simple after the gown came off. But Michael's story was different. His career was rising fast in Lagos. His dedication and honesty made his boss notice him. Within a few months, he was promoted. He began to earn a salary that most of his age mates could only dream of. Michael wasn't proud or arrogant. He often called his two friends, checking on them, encouraging them to keep pushing. "Don't give up," he would say gently. "Your turn will come soon." Sometimes, he even sent them money without being asked. "Take this for food or transport," he would write in a text. At first, they were grateful. They called him our helper, our brother, and even joked, "When you finally make it big, we'll be your bodyguards." But as time went on, gratitude turned into comparison, and comparison turned into envy. One evening, David scrolled through social media and saw a photo of Michael standing beside his new office car. The caption read, "Grateful for how far God has brought me." David stared at the screen for a long time. His lips formed a smile, but his heart did not. He murmured, "So he's even driving now." "We're still trekking." Kelvin, sitting nearby, saw the same post and laughed bitterly. "He's enjoying Lagos life while we're dying here." Maybe he's forgotten our promise. Jealousy does not shout. It whispers softly into the heart until good memories start to feel like insults. Weeks passed. Michael kept sending little support whenever they asked, but the calls became more frequent. "Bro, things are hard. Please send something," David would say. "Kelvin's bike broke down, and we can't fix it," another message would come. Michael helped again and again, but his patience was slowly wearing thin. He was a man, not a miracle worker. Then one day, everything changed. 6 months after getting his job, Michael bought himself a silver Toyota Camry. It was his first major achievement, the reward for his hard work. Out of excitement, he decided to surprise his two friends. He drove to Ibadan to see David first. David's eyes widened when he saw the car. "Ah, Michael, you've blown O," he shouted, hugging him tightly. Michael laughed. "It's just grace, my brother." From Ibadan, he continued to Enugu to see Kelvin. There, the three old friends reunited. They ate, drank, and laughed together like old times. The joy was pure, the atmosphere warm. But Michael didn't stop there. He reached into his pocket and brought out 2 white envelopes. "I haven't forgotten our promise," he said proudly. "We said whoever rises first will lift the others. I'm giving each of you 1 million naira. Use it to start something." David's hands shook as he opened the envelope. Kelvin stared in disbelief. "Mike, are you serious?" Kelvin asked. "Of course," Michael smiled. "You're my brothers." They celebrated till late into the night, singing, drinking, and calling him Boss Mike. But months later, the 1 million each was gone. Kelvin wasted his share on parties and new clothes. David invested in a small business with a dishonest friend who disappeared with the money. When the money finished, they didn't admit their mistakes. They blamed Michael instead. "He didn't give us enough," Kelvin said. "What can 1 million even do?" David agreed. "He should have guided us. He's enjoying himself in Lagos while we're here suffering." That was the moment when jealousy turned into quiet resentment. They began to compare their lives to his at every chance. Michael's success, which once inspired them, now reminded them of their own failures. He called often, but the energy had changed. Their voices no longer carried joy. When he asked about their plans, they gave short answers. When he tried to advise, they felt insulted. Still, Michael believed they only needed time. He had no idea that the same friends, who once celebrated his success, were now sitting in dark rooms, discussing how unfair life was. And sometimes, jealousy doesn't shout. It grows in silence, waiting for the right moment to strike. When success begins to shine on one man among many, the light that guides him can also blind others who stand too close. Michael's life was moving forward faster than anyone expected. Within 6 months at his new job, his managers trusted him with big projects. His salary increased, his confidence grew, and his heart overflowed with gratitude. But more than anything, he wanted to see his 2 closest friends, David and Kelvin, rise too. He never forgot the promise they made under the mango tree in school, that whoever succeeded first would lift the others. So when he bought his first car, a silver Toyota Camry, Michael decided it wasn't just for himself. He wanted his friends to taste progress too. He called them one evening. "Guys," he said happily, "come to Lagos this weekend. I have something to show you." It didn't take long before David and Kelvin arrived, carrying small bags and big expectations. They were amazed by how much Michael had changed. His apartment was clean and beautiful, with air conditioning and a refrigerator filled with food. Kelvin laughed and said, "So, this is how big men live, eh?" Michael chuckled, "Nothing big yet, my brother. I'm still learning, but God has been kind." They spent the weekend together, eating, talking, and remembering the old days when they used to queue at the university cafeteria with empty plates. It was laughter all around. On the second night, Michael did something that shocked them both. He handed each of them a white envelope. David frowned slightly, thinking it was just transport money. "Mike, you're always too generous," he said. "Open it," Michael replied with a smile. They opened the envelopes slowly and froze. Each contained a check of 1 million naira. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Kelvin shouted, "Jesus Christ! Mike, you're not serious." Michael laughed. "I'm very serious. Start something small. A shop, a bike business, a trade. I believe in both of you. Let's grow together." David hugged him tightly, whispering, "You're too good, Mike. We don't deserve this." Michael smiled and said, "We're brothers. Your success is mine too." The 3 of them went out that night to celebrate. They drank, danced, and laughed loudly. But while Michael saw joy, something else was happening in the hearts of the other 2. A quiet mixture of pride and pressure. At first, they made promises. Kelvin said he would buy 2 bikes and start a small transport business. David said he'd use his money to open a printing shop. Michael encouraged them, and promised to support when needed. But after a few months, things didn't go as planned. Kelvin's friends convinced him to enjoy small before investing. He began to spend carelessly, buying designer clothes, throwing parties, and trying to impress girls who once ignored him. Within weeks, the money was gone. David wasn't any wiser. He gave his own share to an old schoolmate who claimed to have a business deal that would double the money in a month. The man disappeared. When the dust settled, both of them were broke again, and ashamed. Michael noticed their silence. He called and asked gently, "How's the business going?" David lied, "It's moving small, bro." Kelvin said, "The bikes are working." Just slow market. Michael believed them, but deep down, they were burning with embarrassment. Pride refused to let them admit they had wasted the help they were given, and soon, pride turned to bitterness. One evening, David said to Kelvin, "If he really wanted us to succeed, he would have guided us. What's 1 million? That's pocket change to someone like him." Kelvin nodded slowly. "You're right. He gave us just to feel like a savior. He wants us to worship him." That was the day their gratitude died. From then on, every time Michael achieved something new, they found a reason to twist it into an insult. When he changed apartments, they said, "He's showing off." When he got a promotion, they said, "He's lucky, not hard-working." When he bought gifts for them again, they said, "He's buying our loyalty." The same man who once lifted them was now the enemy in their minds. But Michael didn't see any of it. He was still the same cheerful friend, still checking on them, still believing that someday they'd all rise together. He didn't know that his own kindness had become the root of their hatred, and that soon that hatred would grow teeth. Because sometimes, in trying to help others, you unknowingly feed the very envy that will destroy you. When life decides to test a man, it doesn't send a warning. It simply turns his laughter into questions. For David and Kelvin, the months that followed were full of questions. The 1 million each that Michael had given them was gone, swallowed by bad choices, pride, and waste. They had nothing to show for it but regret. David's small room in Ibadan was falling apart. The rent had expired 2 months ago, and the landlord had grown tired of waiting. Every morning, David pretended to leave for work so that neighbors wouldn't know he was jobless. Every evening, he came back to darkness and silence. One hot afternoon, the landlord came banging on his door. "David, I've given you enough time. Pack your things and leave," David begged. "Please, just 2 more weeks. I'll get the money." But the man shouted back, "You've been saying that since last year. Get out." By evening, David's clothes and old mattress were on the street. As the sky darkened, he sat beside his scattered belongings, tears rolling down his face. In that moment, he remembered only one person he could call, Michael. His hands trembled as he dialed the number. "Mike, please, I'm finished," he said in a shaky voice. "My landlord has thrown me out. Help me, please." There was silence on the line, then Michael's calm voice came through. "David, I sent you money just last week, and before that, I helped with your phone bill. I've been doing my best, bro." You know that David swallowed hard. I know. But this one is different. I just need the rent." "Please," Michael sighed deeply. His voice was soft but firm. "My brother, I've helped many times. I can't keep doing it every time you call. I'm not refusing because I don't care. I just can't carry everyone's load. There's a limit to what one man can do for another man." Those words stabbed David's heart like a knife. He felt humiliated, forgotten. The friend who once gave him 1 million naira was now telling him There was a limit, he whispered bitterly. So that's it. You've made it, and now we're a burden to you. Michael replied gently, Don't say that. I'm still your brother. But you have to find your own feet. David ended the call without another word. That night, he slept on a neighbor's veranda, with mosquitoes biting his skin and anger burning in his chest. He stared into the darkness and muttered, So this is friendship. You lift a man once, then you forget him. At the same time, in Enugu, Kelvin was facing his own storm. His motorcycle business had collapsed. The police had seized his bike for lack of papers, and he had no money to reclaim it. He called Michael the next morning. Bro, please help me. I just need to sort these officers. They took my only source of income. Michael paused. Kelvin, I helped with money last week. You and David keep calling every few days. I can't solve every problem. Kelvin forced a smile over the phone. So now, we're disturbing you, Abi? Michael sighed. No, you're not disturbing. But you have to start finding solutions, not just waiting for me. When the call ended, Kelvin clenched his fist. He turned to David later that day and said, You were right. This guy has changed. He acts like he's God because he's working in Lagos. David nodded slowly. He forgot that he once shared Gary with us. Let him enjoy. Life has a way of humbling proud people. Kelvin added, He won't always be the lucky one. Everyone's time comes. That night they sat together at a small bar. The fan above them made more noise than air. Their drinks were warm, but their hearts were colder. Kelvin spoke with a low voice. Do you know what hurts me? We celebrated him when he had nothing. Now that he's up, he looks down on us. That 1 million he gave us, it was never help. It was pride. David's face hardened. He thinks success made him wiser than us. But God sees everything. Pride goes before a fall. They both raised their glasses quietly, bitterness flowing between them like poison. The brotherhood that once united them had become a silent battlefield. And as they sat there, complaining about life, jealousy sat beside them, smiling. Because envy does not always roar like a lion. Sometimes it whispers softly through the voice of a friend. When light enters a man's life, it often brings shadows he cannot see. Michael had reached a point where his days were full of purpose. He was no longer the confused graduate searching for opportunities. He had become a man with direction. Yet deep inside, there was a space, a soft emptiness only love could fill. That emptiness found its answer one bright afternoon during a business seminar in Victoria Island, Lagos. It was a gathering of young professionals. Everyone came in suits, eager to learn and network. Michael sat near the front, listening attentively, when a gentle voice beside him asked, Is this seat taken? He turned, and for the first time, his heart skipped. Her name was Sandra. She was calm, confident, and graceful. Her smile carried peace, and her words flowed like quiet music. They talked after the seminar and exchanged numbers. What started as friendly chats soon turned into long evening calls that stretched till midnight. Sandra was different from the other women Michael had met. She didn't care about his job title or his car. She cared about his heart. She asked about his dreams, his fears, his faith. She encouraged him to pray, to give thanks, to stay humble. For the first time in years, Michael felt complete. Their friendship blossomed into love, and soon, the entire office knew about the man who found peace in a woman's smile. They attended church together, volunteered at charity programs, and built a relationship founded on mutual respect. Months later, when Michael decided to propose, Sandra said yes with tears in her eyes. The joy in his heart was indescribable. He couldn't wait to share the news with his two old friends, David and Kelvin. He called them that evening. "My brothers, I'm getting married," he said excitedly. For a few seconds, there was silence on the line. Then David said softly, "Wow, congrats, bro. That's fast." Kelvin forced a laugh. "You're not even waiting for us to catch up, Abby." Michael chuckled, not noticing their tone. "My time came. Yours is coming soon. I want you both to stand beside me on that day. My brothers must be there." They agreed, but when the call ended, their hearts grew heavier. Kelvin slammed his phone on the table. So now he's getting married too. The guy's life is like a movie, David replied bitterly. Everything he touches turns to gold. He got the job, the car, and now a fine woman. Meanwhile, we're here watching him live our dreams. Envy had now become their daily companion. A quiet voice that told them Michael didn't deserve what he had. Over the following weeks, Michael was busy planning the wedding. He often called them for updates, reminding them about suits, travel, and hotel arrangements. "Don't worry about expenses," he said kindly. "I'll cover everything, just be there." The words that once meant love now sounded like pride to their bitter hearts. "Cover everything," Kelvin mocked later. "So we'll look like beggars at his wedding." David nodded. "He just wants to show the world that we're his poor friends." The more they spoke, the more resentment grew, until jealousy turned into a dangerous desire. One evening, after drinks at their usual bar, Kelvin leaned closer to David. His eyes were dark, his voice low. "Do you know what hurts most?" he said. "He thinks we need him. But what if the world saw he's not untouchable?" David frowned. "What do you mean?" Kelvin stared into his drink. "I'm not saying we kill him. Just teach him a lesson. Let him feel what we've felt for years." David didn't reply, but silence can sometimes mean agreement. Days later, Michael sent them money for transport and suits. He laughed on the phone, completely unaware of the thoughts hiding behind their laughter. "You guys are my best men," he said. "The bachelor's night will be small, just us and a few friends." When the call ended, Kelvin smiled, but it wasn't the smile of joy. It was the smile of a man who had made up his mind. Sandra, on the other hand, was busy preparing for her dream wedding, full of love and excitement. She had no idea that the same friends her fiancé trusted most would soon destroy everything they had built. Love had entered Michael's life like a sunrise, bright, beautiful, and full of hope. But somewhere behind that light, envy was sharpening its knife. The night that should have been filled with laughter was instead written in sorrow long before it began. It was 2 nights before Michael's wedding, the wedding that was meant to crown his years of patience, hard work, and love. Sandra was busy finalizing her gown fittings and confirming guest lists. Michael was in high spirits. He couldn't wait to start a new chapter of life with the woman who had brought peace to his soul. To celebrate his final days as a bachelor, his friends, David and Kelvin, suggested a small get-together. "Just the boys," Kelvin said on the phone. "Old times, no stress, no crowd." Michael smiled. "That's a great idea. Let's do it. You guys have been there from the beginning. I can't celebrate without my brothers." He booked a quiet lounge in UCHE, a place they had once visited years back during NYSC days. He ordered drinks, food, and even brought small gifts for them. The night came. The lights of Lagos glittered like stars. Inside the lounge, the air was warm, filled with the soft sound of music and laughter. Michael arrived first, dressed neatly in a white shirt and dark jeans. He greeted the staff politely, then sat, waiting with excitement. When David and Kelvin entered, he stood up immediately and hugged them. "Ah, my brothers, I've missed you," he said warmly. They smiled, exchanging jokes as if the past bitterness had never existed. They ordered drinks, clinked glasses, and laughed about their university days, how they once chased girls together, how they cooked with one small stove and spoiled the hostel with smoke. To anyone watching, they looked like three happy men celebrating friendship. But beneath the surface, one heart was full of love, another of guilt, and the third of poison. At one point, Michael excused himself to answer a call from Sandra. Kelvin's eyes followed him as he stepped away. When the waiter turned his back, Kelvin quietly reached into his pocket and brought out a small packet. White powder, wrapped in foil. David's heart skipped. "Kelvin, what's that?" he whispered. Kelvin's eyes were cold. "Just something to calm him down. I'm tired of his perfect life. Don't worry, it'll only make him sick." "Are you sure?" David asked, trembling. Kelvin sneered. "You're scared? After everything he's done, always talking to us like he's our savior." Before David could speak, Kelvin poured the powder into Michael's glass and stirred it quickly. Moments later, Michael returned, smiling. "Ah, you guys started drinking without me," he teased, sitting back down. They all raised their glasses. "To brotherhood," Michael said proudly. "To brotherhood," they echoed. The glasses clinked. Michael drank deeply, laughing as the music played louder. For the rest of the night, he didn't notice anything strange. He danced, cracked jokes, and thanked them for always standing by him. Even Kelvin laughed, a fake laugh, sharp and hollow. By midnight, they all went their separate ways. Michael drove home, humming a love song and smiling at the thought of Sandra's face. But by morning, the song had turned to silence. Sandra woke to the sound of her fiancé coughing violently in the bathroom. She ran to him and screamed when she saw him on the floor, his face pale, his hands trembling. "Michael, what's happening?" she cried, shaking him. He couldn't speak clearly. His voice was weak. "I don't feel well." She rushed him to the hospital, tears streaming down her face, her hands trembling as she called his name over and over. Doctors ran in, nurses hurried, machines beeped, but time was running faster than hope. Sandra prayed, begged, and cried. "Please, Lord, not now. Not him." Hours passed. Michael's breathing slowed. Then, without warning, the machine beside him went flat. The doctor looked up sadly and whispered, "He's gone." Sandra screamed. Her voice echoed through the hallway like thunder. She fell to her knees beside his body, crying uncontrollably. The man who had helped everyone, the man who had lifted others, was gone, taken by the same people he called brothers. Outside, the sun was shining, but for Sandra, the world had turned dark. David heard the news first. He froze, guilt consuming him. He tried to pray, but his hands shook. Kelvin, however, kept a straight face. "Accidents happen," he muttered coldly. But deep in his heart, he knew the truth, and it would soon find him. Because the same hands that raise a glass in betrayal often tremble when the truth knocks on the door. When a good man dies suddenly, the earth itself pauses to ask why. The news of Michael's death spread like wildfire. Everyone who knew him was shocked. His colleagues, his neighbors, even his pastor. It didn't make sense. He had been full of life just the day before. Sandra could not stop crying. The wedding gown she was supposed to wear in 2 days now hung lifeless on the wardrobe, like a ghost mocking her dreams. Friends came to console her, but their words felt empty. Her heart refused to believe it. The man who was supposed to take her down the aisle was now lying cold in a coffin. "Why, Lord?" she wept. "Why take a man who harmed no one?" Michael's family was devastated. His mother fainted when she heard the news. His father sat quietly in a chair, his face turned to stone. The doctor told them it was food poisoning, but Sandra's spirit was restless. "No," she said firmly, "he didn't eat anything strange at home. He was fine until after the bachelor's night with his friends." That was when suspicion began to grow. She went to the police and reported her fear. The officers listened, taking notes carefully. "Madam," one of them said, "we'll look into it." At first, nobody believed there was foul play, but Sandra refused to stay silent. She told them about the celebration, the drinks, and how Michael had called those friends brothers. Days later, the hospital released the autopsy report. The cause of death: poison, a chemical substance mixed with alcohol. Sandra fell to her knees, shaking. No. Who would do such a thing? Her mind raced back to the two men, David and Kelvin. They had always been close to Michael, but something about them had changed in recent months. Their laughter at the bachelor's night suddenly echoed in her memory, not as joy, but as deceit. The police began their investigation. They visited the lounge where the event had been held. The manager handed them the CCTV footage. Hours later, the truth was laid bare before their eyes. On the screen, they saw Michael standing up to take a call. Then, clear as daylight, Kelvin's hand moved across the table toward Michael's glass. His body shielded the motion, but the camera caught it, a small packet being emptied into the drink. The officers froze the frame, zoomed in, and exchanged looks. "That's him," one said quietly. They wasted no time. Both David and Kelvin were arrested. When David saw the police at his door, he collapsed in fear. "Please, please, I didn't mean to," he shouted as they handcuffed him. At the station, he couldn't hold it in anymore. "It was Kelvin," he cried. "He said it would only make Michael sick. I swear I didn't know he would die." Tears rolled down his face as he spoke, but it was too late. Kelvin sat silently beside him, cold and expressionless. His arrogance had melted into regret. When the officer asked him why, he looked down and whispered, "Because I was tired of watching him win." Those words broke everyone in the room. Even the officers went silent. Sandra was called to the station. When she saw them behind bars, she couldn't hold back her tears. "You killed him," she screamed. "He gave you everything. He loved you like his own blood." Kelvin couldn't look at her. David broke down again, crying uncontrollably. Outside, the news spread fast. People were stunned. Two best friends poisoning the man who once helped them. Michael's funeral was filled with mourners. The church overflowed. People whispered as the coffin was lowered into the ground. "Such a good man," someone said. "He even gave them money to start a business." Another added, "You never truly know a man's heart." Sandra stood near the grave, holding a white rose. Her face was swollen from crying. She whispered softly, "Michael, they took you too soon. But your story will live. The world will know that not every smile is love." As the priest prayed, David and Kelvin sat in their prison cells, broken, silent, and haunted. David couldn't eat or sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Michael's smile and heard his last words, "My brothers forever." Kelvin, on the other hand, just stared at the wall. He replayed the night in his head, the laughter, the glass, the poison. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't silence it, because guilt has a voice, and it whispers louder than any jailer. And so, the truth came out. Michael was gone, but justice had spoken. There are stories that end with laughter, and there are stories that end with lessons written in tears. Michael's story was one that the earth itself refused to forget. The day of his burial arrived. The sky was grey, and a light drizzle fell, as if even heaven mourned the death of a kind man. The church compound overflowed with people. Friends, colleagues, neighbours, even strangers came to pay their last respect. At the front sat Sandra, wearing a plain black gown, her face hidden behind dark glasses. But no glasses could hide her pain. Her fingers clutched the edge of the coffin as tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Beside her, Michael's parents sat broken and speechless. His mother's hands trembled as she whispered, "He was my only son, my light." The priest stood before the crowd, his voice low but powerful. "Today we lay to rest a man who lived with an open heart," he said. "He gave when others held back. He forgave when others kept grudges. But it was his goodness that became his weakness. And that weakness, my children, was called trust." The congregation went quiet. Even the birds seemed to listen. As the coffin was lowered into the earth, Sandra let out a sharp cry. "Michael, you didn't deserve this. You helped everyone. You believed in friendship, but friendship betrayed you." The mourners joined her in tears. An elderly man in the crowd shook his head and said softly, "Not every friend that claps for you is happy for you." After the burial, people whispered about what had happened, how the same men he once called brothers had poisoned him. The story spread across the city, then across the country. Everyone spoke about it. "How could they do that?" one woman asked. "Jealousy," another replied. "It's a disease of the heart." In the days that followed, the lesson in Michael's death became a warning for others. Pastors preached about it in churches. Teachers used it to teach their students about envy and betrayal. It became one of those stories parents told their children before bed, saying, "Be kind, but be wise. Love your friends, but don't trust blindly." Meanwhile, inside the prison walls, David and Kelvin lived with the ghosts of their choices. David spent his nights crying. The memory of that bachelor's night tormented him. He wished he could turn back time, wished he had stopped Kelvin before the poison touched the glass. But wishes don't change graves. He often said to himself, "We killed the only true friend we had." Kelvin, once proud and full of ego, now sat silently in his cell, staring at the wall. The arrogance in his eyes had vanished. Regret lived there now, heavy and permanent. One afternoon, the prison chaplain asked him, "Why did you do it?" Kelvin's voice broke as he whispered, "Because envy is louder than reason." Those words became the only truth he ever spoke again. Outside those prison walls, Sandra visited Michael's grave every Sunday. She would clean the tombstone, place fresh flowers, and talk to him softly as if he were still beside her. "Your story has changed lives," she would whisper. "People now think twice before trusting everyone. Your death was not in vain." Sometimes she brought children from the orphanage he once supported. She would point at the grave and tell them, "This man was a giver." But his story reminds us, even a heart full of gold must learn to guard itself. As months turned into years, the pain softened, but the lesson remained sharp. Michael's name became a symbol, a reminder of how dangerous jealousy can be. In offices, people would say, "Remember Michael's story. Not everyone smiling beside you is clapping for your success." In homes, mothers would warn their sons, "Don't tell everyone when God blesses you. Some hearts smile while planning your fall." The story of Michael, David, and Kelvin became a living proverb, one that would outlive them all. And though his body slept beneath the earth, his words and deeds continued to speak loudly. There's a limit to what one man can do for another. Be kind, but be careful. Because in the end, it wasn't the world that destroyed Michael. It was the envy of those who once called him brother.